There's no other way to say this. The Donkey Kong canon is weird. What started as an arcade staple where a giant ape kidnapped a woman at a construction site has morphed into a series of platformers with more Kongs than Cranky could shake his stick at. And yet, despite the modern love for Cranky, Diddy, Dixie, and Funky, there's one Kong that precedes them all that just doesn't get mentioned all that much anymore: Donkey Kong Jr. And while the common conceit is that Jr. is actually the modern DK, that's not quite true. So it's time to cast a searchlight on this lost Kong to see exactly how, or perhaps why, he disappeared. Welcome to Missing in Action, where we take a look back at game elements that have mysteriously gone missing. Donkey Kong Jr. first appeared in the 1982 game that bore his name, acting as a sequel to the original Donkey Kong. But this time players were instead cast as Jr. himself, out to rescue his dad from Mario. It was a reversal of roles right up there with the likes of Terminator 2. Okay, maybe not, but it led to a different sort of gameplay that was focused more on the ape's natural penchant for climbing vines rather than jumping. And there was a certain strategy to that too, such as how grabbing two vines allowed you to ascend faster, but grasping just one is the faster way down. It led to players needing to figure out what the best technique was at any one moment in order to evade enemies, reach fruit that could be dropped onto them, and of course eventually reach Mario at the top. Jr. returned a year later on the Famicom in Donkey Kong Jr. Math, where old DK decided to homeschool his son, for whatever reason. I guess DK isn't a huge proponent of the public education system? In the game, Jr. had to climb vines to gather numbers and mathematical symbols in order to equal the number his father's holding up. When it was released stateside for the NES in 1985, it was actually under the Educational Series label and sold so poorly that it was the only game with that label. It's too bad Jr. just couldn't find dollar signs among all those symbols. Though that poor reception never stopped Nintendo from re-releasing the game on the Wii and Wii U's virtual consoles. And for the better part of the next decade, Jr. was relegated to little more than cameos or re-releases of his arcade game. During that time, he could be seen in the audience alongside Mario, Luigi, and Donkey Kong in the arcade versions of both Punch-Out and Super Punch-Out. These cameos make it more than a little appropriate that Donkey Kong himself eventually jumped into the ring in Punch-Out for the Wii. It wasn't until 1992 that Jr. would become playable again, and as the only Kong to appear in Super Mario Kart. His father didn't appear at all, leaving DK missing in action.
I get it!
Despite his youth, Jr. was still considered a heavyweight though, along with Bowser, and his preferred item was, what else, a banana. Even though bananas had appeared in Jr.'s arcade game alongside other fruit, this was arguably the game that began the Kong's obsession with bananas. But after his first appearance, Donkey Kong Jr. vanished from the Mario Kart roster, and was never seen again, with Donkey Kong himself taking the reins in every subsequent Mario Kart game. Although, Jr. did make a small cameo in the audience of Waluigi Stadium in 2003's Mario Kart Double Dash, which complicates things a bit, but we'll get into that soon enough. Despite his absence from Mario Kart, Jr. still made occasional cameos in the Mario games throughout 1993. First appearing in Mario's Time Machine as a picture hung in Bowser's Museum, and then again in the Super Mario All-Stars version of Super Mario Bros. 3, where the King of Giant Land was transformed to look like Jr. 1994 was a turning point for Jr. though. He first appeared in Donkey Kong for the Game Boy, where he helped his father keep Pauline away from Mario's rescue attempts by flipping switches or throwing poisonous mushrooms at him. It was the most we had ever seen the father and son interact. So things were looking up for Jr. That is until the other 1994 Donkey Kong game hit, the 800-pound gorilla if you will, in the form of Donkey Kong Country. Suddenly, Donkey Kong was back in the spotlight in a way not seen since his arcade debut nearly 15 years earlier, and he wasn't alone as he brought along an entire Kong crew, with one notable exception. Jr. was nowhere to be seen. And that's because the conceit of Donkey Kong Country was that Cranky Kong was the original Donkey Kong, just older and grumpier, while the new Donkey Kong was his grandson, leaving Jr. out of the game altogether. However, this wasn't Rare's original plan, because according to the game's lead designer Greg Mayles, in an interview with Retro Gamer magazine, Diddy Kong's role was originally meant to go to a redesigned Junior, but Nintendo wasn't a fan of Junior's new look and asked Rare to either stick to the original or make the redesign a completely new character. Obviously, Rare went with the latter option, which for all intents and purposes cut Junior out of the picture. And it's probably a good thing too, because can you imagine what it would do to the Donkey Kong timeline? Without some serious retcons, Junior would technically be the son of two different Donkey Kongs. Or would they have changed Cranky's origin completely? However, as is, with Cranky being the grandfather of DK and Junior being Cranky's son, the implication would then be that Junior is the father of the new Donkey Kong, even if he's never explicitly mentioned. That said, even though Junior was cut from Country, he continued to appear in other Nintendo titles, and not just as cameos. In 1995, he returned as a playable character in Mario's Tennis for the Virtual Boy, showing that he was still in Nintendo's minds at the time. In fact, just like Super Mario Kart, Donkey Kong was not playable at all in the Virtual Boy title. From that point on, he mainly appeared in the Game & Watch Gallery collections, where he took a role in various games that updated Nintendo's classic Game & Watch line. It was all minor in the grand scheme of things, but Junior was still there, monkeying around with the Mario crew. And then Rare decided to upend the cart for Junior again. In 1999, they released Donkey Kong 64, and rather than imply that Cranky Kong was Donkey Kong's grandfather, they instead made it seem like he was his father, with lines like, "Candy is always willing to offer her musical help to that undeserving son of mine and his fancy polygonal friends," shown in the game's manual. This would mean that Junior was the modern DK all along. And sure, that's fine. It provides a role for Junior and shows a legacy of the Kongs. It makes sense, even if this is a retcon of Donkey Kong Country. But then there's 2000's Mario Tennis on the Nintendo 64. In that game, both Donkey Kong and Junior were featured as playable characters, and it's still the only time where DK was playable alongside Junior. Now, at face value, this makes complete sense, as most people would view these two as separate characters. You have Donkey Kong and his son, Junior, just like in the original arcade game. DK even has the tie that he first wore in Donkey Kong 94. But when you look at the actual design of Donkey Kong, it's obvious that it's based on the modern version from Donkey Kong Country. And this is also the case for every one of his appearances moving forward from that SNES game. So, knowing this, and when combined with DK64's retcon from the previous year, this actually means that modern DK and Junior are the same character. It's kinda weird, but not that weird since this is the same game that also has Baby Mario playing alongside his older self. The question is, was this Nintendo's intent? Were they treating this Donkey Kong as the one from the arcade game, just with a modern design? Or did they just not care about these relationships and simply prefer to use their own character rather than bringing in Diddy? It really is quite Kongfounding. Wait a second. Andre, have you been messing with my scripts again? Anyway, despite this dual appearance, Junior's original design never again returned in a playable role. And that would be fine if the modern DK were just a grown-up version of Junior. It just kinda means that we wasted our time making this video since he never technically disappeared. Except Nintendo changed DK's parentage again. While it wasn't specifically mentioned in any of the Donkey Kong games from 2000 to 2010, Donkey Kong Country Returns for the Wii claimed that Cranky Kong was the modern DK's grandfather once again, just like in the original Donkey Kong Country. And in every subsequent appearance of Cranky Kong, that has remained the case. Still, this confusion led to the widespread belief that Junior was the modern DK instead of being the modern DK's father. Don't worry though, it gets weirder. Since Mario Tennis, the original incarnation of Junior has gone almost completely missing, only used as cameos where his original game is mentioned, like in Super Smash Bros. Melee as a trophy, Brawl as a sticker, and in one of WarioWare Twisted's microgames, and even as a costume in Super Mario Maker. But it was Donkey Kong Country Tropical Freeze that finally allowed him to be in a Donkey Kong Country game, albeit just within a Wii U that a statue of the arcade Donkey Kong holds above his head in the background of Aqueduct Assault. It's something though, right? What was most damning for Junior though seems to be 2003's Mario Kart Double Dash. Even though he cameoed in Waluigi Stadium, it seems Junior was originally supposed to have a bigger role. Thanks to an early demo of Double Dash, data miners discovered that Junior was intended to be a playable character and the partner to Donkey Kong. However, it was ultimately decided that Diddy Kong should have the spot, a decision that, in retrospect, put an end to Junior as a viable character. From that point on, Diddy Kong was the one to get the playable roles in Nintendo games, from Super Smash Bros. To the Mario sports titles, including the sequel to Mario Tennis on the GameCube. Poor guy, Mario Tennis was the one thing he had, but Diddy is simply more popular and recognizable among the fanbase. So it seems that Junior is simply the father of the modern DK, something made even more apparent thanks to Yoshi's Island DS, where this DK appeared as a baby with a bib rather than show him as Junior, a design that carried over into Mario Super Sluggers. That baby is definitely not Junior, but a younger, modern Donkey Kong. It all makes sense, right? Well, not really. After all, Baby Mario was featured in Yoshi's Island DS2, which would make Mario the same age as the modern DK, which is impossible if he fought with the original Donkey Kong, who, we remind you, is Cranky Kong. So unless Mario and Luigi's father also fought the original Donkey Kong, oh dear, I think I've gone cross-eyed. Yeah, it's weird and confusing.
I think you mean to say it's confusing.
Ugh, really, Andre? But yes, especially since if Junior ever does appear again, it will always be in his standard design. And that likely explains why we probably won't see much of Junior in the future. For one, he's been effectively replaced by Diddy Kong as a partner. For another, we'll never see him acting as the modern DK's father, as they'll want to keep Junior in his younger form, which makes him redundant outside of cameos meant to reference his arcade game. He's simply a memory of Nintendo's arcade origins that helped set the foundation of the Donkey Kong clan. But there's so many Kongs now that he's not really needed. But what do you think? Will Junior remain missing in action from any meaningful Nintendo appearance? Could he return to a Mario sports title? And is there anything else that's gone missing that you want found? Let us know by posting in the comments below and we may feature it in a future episode. Thanks for watching and make sure to click that subscribe button for future Missing in Action episodes and even more from GameXplain.